In this video, I want to go over the notion of a block. So a block is a handy, logical way to look at the pieces of a financial report. And that's what we'll cover in this video. Specifically, I want to explain the difference between a network, a component, and a block. I want to revisit the notion of an information model. I want to introduce the notion of a member arrangement pattern. I want to explain that an information model is a combination of a concept arrangement pattern and the member arrangement patterns of a block. I want to give you some examples of a block and how blocks are identified. And I wanted to explain that every block has exactly one information model. So that's what we'll cover in this video. The best way to understand blocks is to look at the difference between networks, components, and blocks. So networks are XBRL technical syntax, and they're used to separate pieces or sets of things in a report because you want to separate them or because you have to separate them. Sometimes when you create a network, you would want to create a network. Other times you have to create a network because it's unavoidable. You need the network in order to avoid conflicts in the information that you're representing. So a component is defined as a specific part of a network that is identified by the network identifier of the network and the hypercube, the explicit hypercube, or an implied hypercube that groups a piece of the network. So the notion of a component is a handy logical idea that is used to distinguish between the pieces of a business report. And it's basically a network plus a table or a hypercube. So blocks are also a handy tool. So a block is defined as a specific part of a component that is identified by the network in the table, but also by the concept arrangement pattern of the concepts for that piece of the business report that you're looking at. So this may be a little bit confusing right now, but when we look at actual examples of blocks, this will make a lot more sense. But before we look at blocks specifically, let's remind ourselves about information models. So information models are patterns of how parts that make up a model that represents a business report are organized. So every part of every business report has a set of concept arrangement patterns that organize that part. For example, a roll up, a roll forward, adjustments, variance, etc. Every part has a concept arrangement pattern. So as you will see, an information model is a combination of the concept arrangement pattern and the member arrangement pattern. Okay, we'll focus on the concept arrangement pattern for the time being. So the first question you might have is, that seems like a small number of concept arrangement patterns. Well, let's suppose I'm wrong. Let's suppose that there are more concept arrangement patterns. What do? We add more to the list. Maybe there are more, maybe there aren't. So the idea is that financial reports are not random. You can identify the patterns of information and give them names like I have, and then you can leverage the fact that you have named those concept arrangement patterns. That's the only reason why the notion of a concept arrangement pattern was invented. A second thing that makes up an information model is the member arrangement pattern. So there are basically two types of member arrangement patterns. And a member arrangement pattern is basically how the members of an axis are organized. So the broad groups of a member arrangement pattern are an is-a type relationship that describes, some list, but the list of things does not add up mathematically. The second type is the whole or the part-whole relationship, where something is composed exactly of their parts and nothing else or nothing more exists for that whole, and the relationship is mathematical. The parts add up to the whole. So that's the basic idea of member arrangement patterns. You have an is-a type relationship that just describes, and a whole part or a part-whole relationship that shows how things add up. So that's a pretty simple idea. An information model is simply the concept arrangement pattern plus the member arrangement pattern of a piece of a financial report. Every block has exactly one information model. So again, this is a little bit hard to understand now, but you'll see in a second here that this is a it's a really pretty basic idea. And now we'll get into the examples, and that will make things more clear. So let's look at our first block. So let's take the basic roll-up. So again, we're looking at the concept arrangement pattern. Forget about the member arrangement pattern for right now. So a roll-up, remember that a roll-up is simply some set of facts that add up to some total. Fact A plus fact B plus fact N equals some fact T that is the total. You can easily identify a roll-up because it has XBRL calculation relations. And the root concept of that set of calculation relations is the concept that is being rolled up. You're also going to likely have a matching set of XBRL presentation relations, and those are generally represented in a common way, a list of concepts. And you could possibly have a root concept that is used to organize those individual concepts that roll up to the total. So if you look at this roll-up example, you can see you have the root of the abstract concept, property, plant, and equipment by component, that has four concepts that then adds up to the last concept at the bottom. And that's a basic roll-up. So now contrast that roll-up with a different kind of block called a roll forward. So a roll forward is where you have a beginning balance, you have one or more changes that then add up to an ending balance. Generally with a roll forward, you'd have XBRL formulas that provide the business rules that would help you identify something as a roll forward. A lot of people don't create those business rules. You'd likely perhaps have a abstract concept that is the root concept of the roll forward. Then you'll always have the first concept in the beginning of the roll forward as a concept that is an instant, and it has a beginning balance arc roll, label roll, preferred label roll. The last concept will be the ending balance preferred label roll. The first and last concepts are always the same concept, and the first and last concept are always an instant period type. So all the concepts between the first and last concept have a duration period type. So basically you have, as you can see in the graphic, a beginning balance, which is an instant, a set of changes, which are durations, and an ending balance, which is an instant, and the beginning balance plus all the changes equals the ending balance. So let's look at one more example, the hierarchy. So hierarchy is some set of concepts that are related in some way, but there is not a mathematical relationship between the concepts. So to discover a hierarchy, basically you look at a piece of a report, and there are no exponential calculations. There are no exponential formulas that describe it as a roll forward. So the absence of exponential calculations or any other business rules is information that helps you to understand that something is a hierarchy. And then you may have a specific concept at the root of that hierarchy, and then you have some list of concepts as children of the root, and that describes blocks that are hierarchies. So there you have 3 examples of blocks. So now remember that every block has exactly one information model. So look at the image that you can see here on the screen. So that's actually 2 blocks. You see on the top you see a block that is a roll forward, and on the bottom you see a block that is a roll up. So the network that contains the table that contains this component contains 2 blocks. So the point here is that we want to look at blocks because they have the concept arrangement pattern and the member arrangement pattern that is identifiable, and you can use that information to do helpful things to people using the information or even creating the information. So that was a very basic introduction to the notion of a block. So hopefully I've been able to show you the difference between a network, a component, and a block. I've helped you to understand that what an information model is, introduced the notion of a member arrangement pattern, helped you see that an information model is a combination of a concept arrangement pattern plus some member arrangement pattern. We've given you some examples of blocks and how to identify those types of blocks. And we wanted to reiterate that every block has exactly one information model. So I'm going to stop here for now, and in other videos things will be tied together more. But first we have to look at the pieces of the puzzle.